to the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session for Thursday, January 14th, 2021. It is 9:32. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. We have Commissioner Carolina Mejia. I apologize, I got leaf blowers or trimmers or something, so it's probably going to be quite loud on my end. I'll mute when that's appropriate. Commissioner Carolina Mejia, Commissioner Edwards has not joined us.
He's running a couple minutes late, sir.
Okay, Commissioner Edwards presumably will join in. County Manager Mira Chavez. Got our Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, Josh Cummings. Jeremy Davis from his group, and Sonia Katie. Did I pronounce that correctly? Okay. The public may attend on our county YouTube channel or call in by utilizing 360-252-9020 in 1234. Our topic for this half-hour briefing is the 2021 Heritage Grant Program Awards, and I'll let our county manager set this up for us.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. You will hear from the staff today. They have conducted a review of applications related to the 2021 Heritage Grant Program, and they will walk you through as to what the recommendations for the board are, and I believe the next steps will be for you to take our formal action if you agree with the recommendations from staff. There is, I believe, a total of $45,000 or $50,000, I believe, associated with this grant. And who is going to take the lead? Jeremy? Jeremy.
Yes, sir.
So I'll start off real quick, Jeremy. Just wanted to set a quick baseline here and just talk about, just briefly, that this is one of those times where we have a real positive, direct impact on our citizens and our community in terms of being able to preserve our heritage. And this program has a lot of flexibility built in. So you'll hear the different levels that Jeremy will provide in terms of detail and the amounts available. But I want to be really clear and provide this opportunity to say thank you, a huge thank you to Jeremy Davis and Sonia Katie. This program has been helpful, but has kind of been floating in the wind. Sonia and Jeremy have really put some structure to the bones in this process, and it's been recognized. Members of the Heritage Commission have written to the Board of County Commissioners about the success of the past few years, including the publication of the book. Namely, Justice Gary Alexander provided his appreciation for Sonia and Jeremy on many projects. So I just want to say what you're going to hear this morning is the culmination of a lot of hard work from our staff, but also from strong and clear direction from the Board of County Commissioners. So continuing to have that partnership between the board, the staff, and the volunteers in the Heritage Commission is extremely important in this positive product for the community. So that's just kind of setting the stage. Jeremy and Sonia have the ball on the details from here on.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. Jeremy Davis. I have Sonia here to answer any questions on any deep dive details. She's the true staff of the Historic Commission and the knowledge base for this. So what we're requesting from the board today is a final decision on moving forward with the 2021 Heritage Program grant. There's 9 grant applications totaling $45,000. The other decisions we're asking from the board are to extend the 2020 grantees, there's 5 of them, until the end of 2021, and then 2 2019 grantees to the end of 2021. Both of those due to COVID-19, and then 1 exception to the rule, which I'll go over as we get into the briefing. So just to start and give some background for Commissioner Mejia, back in 2005, House Bill 1386 was passed by the Washington State Legislature to set aside $1 from the $5 recording fees to fund historic preservation. In 2009, Thurston County created the Heritage Grant Program so we can spend these funds in the community with those who are interested in doing historic preservation. And these are nonprofits and cities within the county. And the money is spent both within the cities in Thurston County and out in the unincorporated county. Typically a grant year, we'll have $30,000 allocated. Back in 2020, the board allocated $75,000 for that. And we received $73,000 in grant applications for the 2020 grant year. The board was kind enough to allocate $50,000 for Heritage Program grants for 2021. And the community has responded by submitting their applications for $45,000 of that. So I think that's great that we've had such a good response this year. Now, as Josh indicated, the Heritage Grant Program does spend money in the community, and it's our opportunity as a county to help others in our community to do historic preservation and to get our dollars back out into the community. As I think I'm going to quote Robin Campbell on this one, when we collect these sorts of grant funds into our tax dollars, our job is not to hold on to them. Our job is to get them out in the community to be spent on how they were intended to be spent. So this for 2021, we opened the grant program application period in September of 2020. That closed on November 2nd. And then the Historic Commission went through their review process. They spent a total of 2 meetings discussing the applications, as well as quite a number of subcommittee meetings and individual meetings with each of the applicants to ask questions. So there were 9 applications received, and the Historic Commission is recommending that all 9 of those applications get funded. And we attached tables to the briefing with more details on each one of those, but I'm going to verbally run through those with you. If you wanted to follow along, the table is on page 5 of the briefing.
Can you hang on with 1 second, Jeremy?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Edwards just joined us. Commissioner, do you have what you need for the
Sure.
paperwork?
You have the copy of the paperwork in front of you?
I'm good here. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Jeremy's about to walk through the applicants on page 5 of the packet.
Okay.
All right. So the first one is from the Olympia Historical Society and Bigelow House Museum. And this one is to replace the front stair treads and risers on the stairs. About $5,000 will be used towards purchasing the products and milling the actual wood. Remember, with historic preservation, we're trying to replace it with like products in a like manner. So sometimes you can't buy stuff right off the stock shelves to do that. The second grant application is from the city of Lacey, and this is for them to continue to digitize articles from the Lacey Leader, which was Lacey's first newspaper. The funds will go towards funding a museum assistant to do that work. And that's $5,000 of a $10,100 expenditure. The third one is the Gate Community Club. The Gate Community Clubhouse itself is a historic church and schoolhouse located what's now Rochester, Washington, which actually used to be the city of Gate, Washington in Thurston County. And this will do some internal improvements in the building to add heating, install some kitchen lights and replace some outside lights and install security cameras on the exterior of the building. This will be $5,000 of a $7,500 project. The number 4 is the South Thurston County Historical Society. And this is for the Tenino Depot Museum to go and finish cataloging all of the stuff that they have in their museum. They have about 40 years worth of items in their museum that they still need to catalog in their curated collection management software. And so the funding will go towards contract accessions to put it in there and probably pay for some of the staff time. And this is $5,000 of a total project of $8,000. The 5th one is the City of Tenino Caboose Restoration, and they are continuing to restore this. This project is going to take until approximately 2027 to complete. This will be $5,000 of an estimated $35,000 project, and it's going to go towards the wood and steel to renovate that caboose. The 5th one is the Olympia Arts and Heritage Alliance, and this is a really great project. This is to install an interpretive panel on East Grave Drive to show the significance of Howard Point, which is one of the first African-American families of Alexander and Rebecca Groundage Howard, which were early Olympia entrepreneurs. The funds will go towards the installation of that sign, permitting for it, and so on. It'll fund $5,000 of an $8,500 project. And if you flip the page, we have the next 3 grants, page 6. The first one, the number 7 grant, is the Olympia Tumwater Foundation. And this one is to fund a sandstone sculpture of the Olympia Brewing Company in the Brewery Park at Tumwater Falls. The funds will spend $5,000 of a $21,800 project towards the labor and sandstone sculpture, and they're expecting to complete this in April of 2021, hopefully. The 8th grant is for the Rachel Corrie Foundation for Peace and Justice, and this is to fund a downtown Olympia walking tour that'll be multimedia, and they're saying it's going to have an iOS and Android app for people to go and do their walk, to do their walks, and it's going to take a look at the history of labor and immigration in Olympia. This will fund $5,000 of a $14,500 project. And the ninth request for 2021 is the Tenino VFW post. This is to replace the monument to the veterans who were lost in World War II. The last monument was a wood monument. It was taken down in the 1960s and it was never put back up. So this will go towards a preparation foundation and inner block work for that new monumentation. So those are the 2021 grant applications the Historic Commission received. They went through a very detailed analysis of all those and went back and forth with some of the applicants, and they are recommending that the board move forward with funding all 9 of those. Are there any questions on any of those?
Board questions?
No.
No questions for me.
Jeremy, just so I make crystal clear, the Gate Community Club and the Gate School, is that the same thing?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. And then going back to your original setup, the money that comes in is fluctuating, I would imagine, because it's based on transactions. And then we just do we have like an account balance and then we set an amount per year? We're not necessarily spending what came in. It sounds like because we adjusted it, you said from 70 and then we hit 50. How does that exactly work?
So that is the 1930 Historic Preservation Fund. The estimated projected intake for 2020 was 85,000 according to the budget office. It looks like the typical year is between 60 and 65,000. That's typically what's projected for that. And I can get that current fund balance for you, but I believe it's right around 200 to 225,000 or so right now.
Okay, so
It's a pretty healthy fund balance.
So the board, and I don't recall it specifically, but the board set 50,000 to allocate. And it seems like that was a good target given that we got $45,000 in project proposals. So, but you're saying that the amount coming in each year may well be more than 50,000 in a given year. And therefore there's a balance there that the board could allocate for a larger project at some point, or how do we manage that? I mean, obviously you said at the beginning, the goal is to take this money in and get it back out to the community, not to accumulate a fund balance. So I'm just wondering what they're planning for that.
Ramiro might know more on this than I do, so he's got his hand up.
Okay,
Right there.
I was just curious, yeah.
Yeah, if I may, traditionally this grant program used to be at about $30,000 a year. And that has been, so last year when the board was reviewing the ending fund balance of this program, and the board decided to increase by $20,000 in an attempt to start reducing the ending fund balance. But you're absolutely correct, Commissioner Minister. Based on the demand, the board can probably increase that next year based how the delivery of the grants are. But I do believe the board has taken steps to make sure that we draw down the ending fund balance by including an additional $20,000 for 2021.
And I see that each grant here is $5,000. Is that what we offer people as the limit for what they can request?
Yes, sir. So in 2020, we offered at $10,000 at board direction. The typical year is $5,000 per grant. And so we followed that guidance for the 2021 grants.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions on the 2021 grant applications?
Doesn't look like it.
Super. Thank you, sirs. All right. So after that, I mentioned asking the board for some COVID-19 related extensions to the 2020 grants and the 2019 grants. On page 7 of the briefing document, you have 5 2020 grants. The first one is actually the Olympia Tumwater Foundation, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So those 5 grants, they were all deemed to be worthy grantees back in 2020. They've all currently requested the typical 6-month extension that we already have built into our grant program. If Commissioner Menzer and Edwards remember last June, we came to the board and asked you to extend 2 grant applications because of COVID-19. These same grant applications have run into some similar challenges in expending their funds. Some have expended some funding, some have expended none. And we would expect to come back to you again in June on a couple of them to ask for you to extend it then. So we thought we could come and ask you while we're talking to you about the grant program itself here in January. So we wouldn't have to necessarily come back in June. But we are asking that the board go ahead and add an additional 6-month extension to the 2020 grantees to go to the end of 2021 as part of your decision. And I can run through each one of those if you desire.
I don't need to hear them. I think you're okay, but
Yeah,
that's
I
just
think
me.
Commissioner Edwards and I are okay. Commissioner Mejia, you've got the chart. Hopefully you've got the spreadsheet there in front of you.
I do, thank you. I don't have any questions regarding an extension. Thank you, though.
Now, I did bring up one additional item that we were going to ask for an exception for, and that is for the first grant application on this list, and that's for the Olympia Tumwater Foundation. They have 2 grants, the Historic Commission and the latter 2020, the board deemed to be appropriate for use of the funding. Typically, we only allow a grantee to have 1 grant at a time. But then again, in a typical year, grantees will expend all their funds because we won't be challenged with COVID-19. And so what we're asking for the board is to make an exception to allow the Olympia Tumwater Foundation to have 2 grants at one time with the completion of their 2020 grant by the end of this year. And that's just one additional decision. And again, that's due to the challenges posed by COVID-19 from what I understand. And Sonia can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And the Historic Commission did actually consider that in their recommendation, and they also deemed it worthy to continue funding both grants, if I remember correctly, Sonia, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
I have a question. I'm
Yes, ma'am.
sorry, as I'm coming along. So the total that the board set last year was 50,000, correct?
Right.
To be
For 2021 grants, yes. For the 2020 grantees, which are these 5 here, they had set a $75,000 limitation.
Okay, so then, out of that 45, we're going to have 35, 40,000 left. So with the goal of this money being used, can the total amount being given out, can that be raised?
So if I may, so what typically happens with the grants that are not completed in 1 year when there's a 6-month extension on those is that we'll come back and there will be an amendment to the budget in mid following year to add those line items to the budget. So that community projects funds will end up going up depending on what the requests are for rollovers from the previous grant year and any board direction. So there'll be additional money that will be added to the budget later should the board choose to move forward with the extensions. It's kind of we've got a lot of overlap in the grant program because of the way it's structured. And so I admit it is a little confusing on how it's laid out in the budget and how it's done. So you always have that budget year, the initial one. So these were funded in 2020, but they haven't expended all their funds. So there's usually always a budget amendment to correct that after we receive all of the final funding requests in December of that year. So when grants are granted, they start in January, at the end of December. We get the final reports from them in December of that year. So we receive the final reports for the 2020 grants in December. The board has already completed their budget review for 2021. So when they ask for those rollovers, we always come back and there's always a correction that's done to account for the rollovers.
Hey, Jeremy, if
Yes,
I may, I think Commissioner Mejia is asking, in the 2020 grant process, it was $75,000. Staff is requesting to extend, 5 projects, I don't know how many, 5, that amounts to $35,000. What is the remainder funding of the $75,000? I assume that has already been spent. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We
Is
spent
that what you,
Yeah.
So that's what probably I believe the question was, is what is the balance from the 2020 grant of the $75,000?
So far we've paid out $38,120 in reimbursements out of the $75,000. And so that leaves of the $35,000, 162 requested, and about $1,500 so that was not allocated to a grant last year.
Thank you.
Okay, does that clear up that issue, Commissioner?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Sorry if I got too detailed there, so. All right, so the third question we're asking the board to do is to extend two 2019 grantees. Again, this is due to COVID-19 complications with completing them. The first one of those two is a very worthy project. That's the Northwest Institute for Leadership and Change. And this is an oral Black history project to catalog oral history from 1950 to 1975. And it's been particularly challenging for this grantee to gather those oral histories in the time of COVID-19. We're talking about face-to-face restrictions and such. And so they've asked again for the board to extend the remainder of their grant. We've reimbursed over $550 so far out of their original $5,000 grant. There's just under $4,500 remaining in that, should the board choose to extend that. The second one is YWCA Olympia. And this is a historic preservation project, and it's phase 2. And it's for the YWCA to transfer their founding documents, photographs, scrapbooks, and other such items to the Washington State Historical Society. And they've had challenges in completing their $2,200 grant as well. So the total 2019 grant funding remaining for the request is $6,646 that they'd like to see extended, or they requested, I should say, sorry.
I have a question, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mayor.
So the justification for this, you said due to COVID-19, but in 2019, the award was supposed to be spending in the calendar year 2019, and that was way before the pandemic hit. So help me understand that justification because of the pandemic.
So the two grantees had originally requested a 6-month extension in December of 2019, which we did grant, which allowed them to move into the first 6 months of 2020. We then came back to the Board of County Commissioners in June of 2020 to request another extension due to COVID-19. And Sonia might know some of the details of why they requested the original extension, but usually when they request that extension, we end up granting it, and typically. And there could be various reasons why they may have been challenged to finish their projects. So.
Yeah, and I don't recall off the top of my head what those reasons were, but I could get that to you for the 2019 extension request. But the second one was COVID related.
I mean, from my perspective, if the applicants are still engaged and, reaching out to us and,
Right.
and they intend to complete the project, I don't have a problem given the unusual circumstances we've had this year. So Commissioner Edwards, I see a thumb.
Yep.
Okay, I got a thumb. Commissioner Mejia, are you supportive of the request for these grants and extensions?
Yes.
Okay, I think you have 3 thumbs. Is that what you needed?
Yes, sir. I wasn't expecting a decision till end of January, so.
No, it's
Pretty
making it easy
straightforward.
for us when we've got these, good groups and it matches up the allocation of dollars. So I might as well get it moving.
All right, thank you.
So the next step, Jeremy, you will bring an AIS for a formal action by the board?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
We'll
thank
go
you.
ahead and put that together for either the 26th or the first meeting in February. I'll work with Sonia on that.
Okay, is that all we needed to do, Ramiro?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Sonia. And thank you, Josh. And commissioners will be back in 5 minutes or so for a commissioner check-in.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.